This is a Viva PR podcast.
It shouldn't be unusual or different for anyone to say, I'm not drinking. The most important day of the Dry January Challenge is actually the 1st of February. 70% of people are still drinking less 6 months later. So there are 10 million people in the UK who are drinking at risky levels. Our mission is to end the serious harms caused by alcohol. If we've helped one person take those steps that maybe have felt absolutely unachievable for so long, that is a job well done.
Today on PR in the Real World, we're joined by Marley from Alcohol Change UK, part of the team behind one of the most successful behaviour change campaigns of our time, Dry January. And we're talking about how it's become a cultural phenomenon and how the team there sustain it year after year, and why changing one life can matter more than chasing big numbers. So shall we have a listen? Hello, Joe, thank you for taking time out of what must be a really busy period for PR in the Real World.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It is a busy time, but yeah, good to talk to you.
So for anyone listening, I think we can assume that most people listening know of Dry January, but perhaps fewer understand the organisation behind it. So can you talk to me a little bit about Alcohol Change, your mission, and how Dry January fits into that?
Yeah, definitely. So Alcohol Change UK is the charity that sets up the Dry January Challenge. And we also work throughout the year, of course. Our mission is to end the serious harms caused by alcohol. So we're not anti-alcohol, and we're very careful to be free of judgment. We want to be really welcoming to people at different points in their relationship with alcohol. But we work in lots of different ways to shift culture around alcohol in the UK, to influence government policy, because we know that right now alcohol is hugely centric to our lives through marketing, through different regulations around labelling, to change personal behaviours around alcohol. And that's where the Dry January Challenge comes in, but also better support and information, and also working to make sure that treatment and other support services for people who need that kind of support with alcohol are there. So we're working right across the spectrum, and we work across the spectrum of alcohol harm too. So right from the everyday impact that alcohol's having on our lives, right through to the more serious harms, long-lasting harms too.
Well, thank you for that context. I was saying before the kind of red light came on for the recording that, I mean, Dry January has become such a cultural phenomenon now that it's almost like a verb, are you doing Dry January and so on. But can we, before we get into it, look back at the early days of the campaign? Did anyone at the charity expect it to become this phenomenon that it is today? And how did you kind of realise that you were onto something?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think obviously it goes back before my time, but even back in those early days, I don't think anyone truly would have believed you if we'd said now that it is probably one of the best known campaigns out there in the UK. It started from very humble origins. It was Emily Robinson, who was someone who worked for our predecessor charity, who had the idea of having an alcohol-free January to prepare for a half marathon, and noticed the impact that was having for her personally. And from that personal experience, just kind of organically grew more of the actual campaign that the organisation then took forward. And then we go forward nearly 15 years. It's been running, and it's become bigger and bigger to the point where, now more than 200,000 people across the world are taking part, using the tools and resources from Alcohol Change UK. We have our app, the Try Dry app, which is the companion to the Dry January Challenge. And beyond that group, there's obviously millions of people who are not only aware of the work that goes into that, but also planning an alcohol-free January. And the difference there, I think, is that kind of DIY version versus the actual Dry January Challenge that we as Alcohol Change UK run. And I'm sure we'll go on to talk about that in a bit.
Yeah. So let's get into talk to your first answer about where the idea has come from and the aims and objectives of the charity. But let's talk about the kind of problem you're looking to solve when it was created and how that has evolved over time. So what are the issues around alcohol that we can delve into?
Yeah, well, I think just to zoom out completely across the UK, we know, I think many of us know, that there is a huge problem with people drinking at risky levels. There are 10 million people in the UK who are drinking at risky levels. That's a very broad spectrum of people drinking in different ways, drinking alcohol at different times. So the Dry January challenge is for anyone who, well, it is for anyone who drinks alcohol and wants to reset a relationship with alcohol. But particularly, we're focusing on people who are drinking more than 14 units per week.
Right.
And that's the lower risk guidelines. Of course, anyone can take part in the Dry January challenge, even if you're drinking less than that. But there's particularly a need for people who are perhaps drinking more than 14 units where, perhaps just noticing the impact on day-to-day life. So that could just be in relationships, in energy and mood, but actually also some of those longer term health impacts too. So, yeah, feeling the increased risk of things like cancer and other long term health conditions too, higher cholesterol, for example.
Yeah.
So, there's a group of people who will really benefit from a 31-day reset. And this is all kind of based in that science behind the Dry January challenge. But I think what's really good about the Dry January challenge is that it is open and it's for individuals to decide the role that alcohol is playing in their lives and to come to the challenge with their own motivations. And we know people come for lots of different reasons.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Just to pick up on that 14 units of alcohol a week, what does that look like? Because I always get confused with units and calories and counting and so on. So what are we typically looking at?
Yeah, lots of people get confused about it. And actually, that's one of the things that we do at Alcohol Change UK is try to demystify some of the facts and figures around alcohol. So if anyone else is interested in that, we have tools like a unit calculator and the Check Your Drinking tool on our website I'd point people towards. But yeah, in simple terms, there's around 2 units per medium glass of wine or beer. So 14 units is around 7 of those drinks. The risk from alcohol is also different depending on how you drink. So kind of what's technically termed high episodic drinking lots in one go is not as good for your health or is even worse for your health than spreading out alcohol units if you're drinking them through the week. But it is, I think people are often coming with lots of questions around alcohol and units and lots of the terminology. And actually the Dry January challenge is another chance to think about what your relationship with alcohol looks like right now, to do some of those quizzes and tools that we've got right at the start and think about what does it actually look like? What's my risk at this point?
It's interesting. From a comms perspective, from a communications point of view, what do you think makes Dry January resonate in ways that other health campaigns often don't?
Yeah, I think there are a few things. Number one is that I think the time of year really works in its favour. I think even before the Dry January challenge started its life as something that we run, January has always been that time of new beginnings, resolutions, thinking about what you want from the year ahead. So the timing is really important. And I think that works in our favour. But there's lots of deeper stuff there too. I think going back to Emily when she set up, or she had the initial idea for the Dry January challenge, it came from a personal motivation. Hers was to support her fitness goals.
Yeah.
And what's good about the Dry January challenge is that, we're not prescriptive. We don't say this is exactly why you should be doing it and this is what you're going to feel at the end of it. We're very honest about the fact that anyone can come to it with different motivations. So it might be that someone comes wanting to get better sleep. That's a really common thing, that people finding that alcohol is interfering with the quality of the sleep they're getting every night.
Yeah.
It might be to save money or to feel fitter or to reduce health risks, or just to set a goal and actually achieve something. Maybe they've said, oh, I must do that. And Dry January challenge is that chance to actually prove it to yourself that, yes, I can do something. And I'm going to, learn those tips and techniques through the Dry January challenge. So because it's open to individuals' interpretation of what their own aims and goals are, I think that works in our favor. We're not saying you have to do it for this.
No, I think as well, it gives you a kind of a bit of a shield, if you will, in terms of like when you're socializing with people, that, people find it acceptable to say, well, I'm doing Dry January this month, so I'll go on the zero alcohol, or I'll have a lemonade this month. And you've not got the same pressure as you have in the rest of the year to join in, if you will.
Yeah. And I think that's, there's definitely that. There's a community feeling to doing the Dry January challenge. That thousands of other people are doing it. Probably other friends and family members might be taking part. So that is definitely helpful. I think the kind of sadder underlying truth there is that we need a reason or an excuse to either cut back or to not drink at all. And that's something as a charity we work all the way through the year, particularly in Dry January as well. But trying to change that culture and attitude around alcohol. It shouldn't be unusual or different for anyone to say, I'm not drinking for any reason, whether that's religious, social, health, or just because you don't want to drink alcohol. There's no other thing really where there's that pressure to do something to fit into your life. So yeah, I think it is true that there's kind of strength in numbers in January, but actually I kind of wish that wasn't the case and it was easier for people.
I echo what you're saying there. I mean, this isn't about me, but I gave up drinking about 5-6 years ago now for my own reasons. But the amount of pressure that I had, particularly at the start of it, people know me, know who I am and what I'm like. So, but initially, those first few months, people were scratching their head to kind of understand it. And I think it's probably a consequence of the age group that I'm in as well, that, there was a lot of kind of pressure around.
Yeah,
I mean, switching back to the kind of PR element of it, we know as an agency, when we're on regular campaigns, it's often hard to kind of sustain something year after year. How do you keep the kind of momentum going? How do you keep it feeling fresh and without losing that core meaning? And I guess for yourselves as well, how do you, get that motivation to go, oh God, it's coming up again?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I will answer it properly. I used to work for Holocaust Memorial Day. That was an annual campaign as well in January, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
And it's it's the same with any kind of annual campaign that you're running in a comms team. That's kind of what, weirdly, is just what I've ended up doing. And you're right, it does take some energy to kind of regroup and think, okay, here we go again. I think the things that we do to keep the Dry January Challenge fresh and new, despite the fact that we've been going nearly 15 years, is a few different things. The personal experiences that people have during the Dry January Challenge. So we have an amazing group of ambassadors, community champions, other people who want to share their experiences with us. So people who have taken part. And those stories are where you find the difference that the Dry January Challenge has made, the lasting difference in lots of cases where someone has started to change their relationship with alcohol and used, say, the Dry app or the Dry January Challenge more generally, our emails, the community groups. And then 6 months later, a year later, they're still noticing lots of improvements and staying on track. That's very powerful for us when we're planning media work or sharing the impact of the Dry January Challenge. That keeps it fresh. I think we also definitely have had to just respond to the world around us as well. The conversation around the Dry January Challenge changes over time. As an example, I think the conversations around no and low alcoholic drinks has really changed. And it's great to see that there are so many more options now for people to enjoy all the way through the year, but certainly in January. But that as a story and as something, particularly with our corporate partners that we work with. So we have an official beer of Dry January, Lucky Saint, lots of other partners too. And they've been on the journey with us as those stories have become more and more relevant. So by leaning into those kind of themes, that's been helpful. And one final thing I think is that we do quite a lot of polling and quite a lot of research each year. And so what's in the polling gives us something fresh to talk about each year, different insights. Whilst the kind of core truths might remain, there's often interesting insights that we get from polling too.
That's really interesting. I guess, I mean, if you were to look back at the societal change from 15 years ago to how things are viewed now, do you think we have been on a shift as a nation?
I think so. I think it definitely has shifted. The question is, I guess, just how much have things shifted? So certainly in the number of people taking part in the Dry January Challenge and being aware of it, that has really shifted in terms of that awareness, as you say, the kind of social acceptability of people taking part now, I think, is much more kind of unquestioning. But that depends on groups. It depends on settings as well. I think it's different for some age groups, for example, and from different backgrounds. But I do think it's a different landscape. But that's all kind of set alongside what's happening, as we know, with the number of deaths from alcohol. So on the hardest end of alcohol harm, we know that those have increased massively, particularly after the pandemic. So the issue of the harms caused by alcohol has not gone away. Culturally, perhaps things are different, but the difference over time is still happening.
That's fascinating. So there's still a massive need for this campaign and others and the work that the charity does.
Yeah, definitely. And we're not complacent at all about the scale of the challenge that we're up against. As I said earlier, 10 million people drinking at risky levels in the UK. is a huge number, and the Dry January Challenge is one point at which to reach people, support people with tools, and the difference that it can make. And the difference that those tools make, for example, the Try Dry app that we have, we've put a lot of energy into the evidence and the research behind it. And what we found was that 6 months later, people who have been using our tools, our Try Dry app, 70% of those who use those tools are still drinking less, as opposed to people who don't, who do it kind of unsupported. So that's why we're so committed to trying to reach more of the group who plan a kind of DIY version.
Yeah.
Because we know that the outcomes can be so much better when people engage with the behaviour change science and the tools and techniques that are there in the Dry January Challenge.
Well, we'll put all the kind of links in the show notes for people. You'll have one more touch point, albeit comms professionals who never drink. How's your understanding of the audience changed as the campaign has developed and grown?
Massively, I think. The team at Alcohol Change UK has grown a lot over the years. And with that growth has come I should say, we're still not an absolutely ginormous team. We're a small charity, but the expertise that we have within the team has definitely grown. And something that's really changed that is the Try Dry app. And I know I've mentioned that a few times, but the difference that makes in terms of us being able to measure the impact of someone coming into the Dry January Challenge using the app, so recording we would say that's their baseline drinking, so what they're doing before they take part in the challenge, recording those dry days, or recording if they do drink on any of the days during January, and year-round understanding of Try Dry users is massively helpful to us in understanding how we can keep improving the offer to people. What is it that people need support with? And then all of the kind of tools and techniques through our motivational emails, for example, website content, that's been refined over time. So yeah, we're always listening to the audience, always doing the research into kind of wider public understanding and motivations for taking a dry month. So that really has got stronger over the years. And some of the public polling work as well, I would say, for the audiences that aren't directly engaged with the Dry January Challenge, that's really important for us to try and reach as many people who haven't yet come through our tools and support, because that's our target. We really want to reach more of those people.
Yeah, because I mean, we can all share stories about drinking and not drinking and so on, and we lots of anecdotal evidence. And I'm sure you and your team have got lots to call on there, but there's that classic cautionary tale that we are not the audience. More generally, when you're talking in kind of population health data, there's obviously, you can take the anecdotal, but you've really got to lean into the survey stuff, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And it's all a mix. I think we also work with fantastic partners and support local partners on the ground as well. So, for example, local authorities, health teams who help to amplify the campaign, but encourage people all the way through the year to use our tools and support. That's hugely useful because obviously they know the groups of people that they're working with or that they need to reach in local areas too. So we don't pretend to know everything about reaching people as part of the Dry January Challenge. I think we try and make sure that we support those groups, other communications teams across the country with resources that are going to be helpful in sharing the Dry January Challenge. And as I said, corporate partners as well, who can help amplify even further to different groups.
Here at Viva, we're all about impact. We're all about telling great stories, but we kind of try and make the impact really kind of central. And we were talking with measurement guru Steph Bridgman in a recent podcast, and she was talking about sanity metrics rather than vanity metrics. And obviously, Dry January generates a huge amount of awareness, and you'll get great coverage and reach data, I guess. But how do you define what's meaningful to you guys at the charity?
Yeah, that's a great question. As you say, there's so much data that comes in all the time, and the scale of the campaign, for example, even just our media monitoring, the numbers become almost meaningless when you're tracking just a keyword. And even automated sentiment monitoring, for example, can only tell you so much. So we work really, really hard to try and think about what actually matters to us. And it all comes down to how do we connect with new people who haven't yet used those tools and support, as I've said. So yeah, attributing more value to, for example, mentions of our Try Dry app, the direct call to action links, obviously, but also just having a sense of perspective when that data is coming through to you. So being able to take a step back and not get too swept away, either in fantastic numbers looking absolutely great, or despairing if the numbers feel smaller than usual. That's the other challenge, I guess, of an annual campaign, is that you're always comparing yourself to previous years. And that can add a lot of pressure. I think other comms teams will probably have felt that. Anyone who's in fundraising, for example, working on annual challenges or awareness campaigns, it's really easy to get dispirited by previous years. But so we try and value the things that really matter, which is ultimately the number of people who are taking part in the Dry January challenge. And then other kind of the cultural shift around alcohol around the Dry January challenge is really important, but that's quite hard to measure. And I think some of that takes a step back.
I mean, it must give you a real good sense of purpose doing this work, though, because when we talk about numbers, you're probably, like you say, you're comparing your best years with this year. So you've got some good benchmark figures. But you can go home at the end of the night, knowing if you've changed one person's life, then it's a job well done, surely. It must give you a good, solid sense that, you are a kind of force for good out there.
Yeah, I definitely think so. When I read someone who perhaps it's just a quick review that they've left on the App Store, or the feedback that we get from participants at the end of the campaign, or when we see comments within the Facebook community group that we run, those are the moments where you think, yes, this is absolutely all worth it. And it is easy, as you say, to get lost in the big numbers. But ultimately, if we've helped one person take those steps that maybe have felt absolutely unachievable for so long, but the Dry January challenge is the thing that unlocks that progress, that is a job well done. And we know that it's not just for that individual. So often with alcohol, the impact is on other people around the individual. So the impact on friends and family, on work and professional life. And so you think about the ripple effect, and it's absolutely massive. Then multiplied by how many people are taking part, it starts to add up to something that is genuinely huge. So there are lots of moments where we can take a step back and think, this is good and we're doing well, but we're also just really ambitious. I think that's maybe a trait of people who work in communications, PR, and media. We're always trying to do something bigger and better and trying to reach more people because we know that it's having an impact for anyone who takes part.
Yeah. When does the planning start for it? Clearly, focus is on, those 31 days, but presumably there's quite a few steps in between.
Yeah, actually would say it's pretty much constant as a feature. It has obviously these waves of being absolutely at its most intense, but it is virtually year round at this point. From the evaluation that happens in February and March, working out what's worked. We do also work with agency partners to deliver certain elements of the campaign. So just the cycles of bringing an agency partner on board, for example, and working through the summer to identify where the priorities are going to be, it is pretty non-stop. And we're always thinking about it, but intense through the summer, autumn, in the run up to January. A lot of it's front loaded. We prepare a lot for a big campaign like this, and it's content creation and getting ready. And really the Boxing Day is the day where we see that massive spike. And there's an interesting psychology there that people need to be in that place of being ready to actually fully commit to being part of the Dry January challenge. But Boxing Day is the day when the campaign is in full swing. Yeah, we're kind of working on it all year round.
In terms of like key channels, where do you kind of put that focus on what works well, or what trends have you seen over the years in terms of like a shift to digital or a shift away from?
Well, I can talk more about kind of what we're doing this year and in recent years. We've deliberately spent a little bit more money on digital marketing. So we know kind of from a cost efficiency perspective that advertising on Meta, on Google, and we're doing more on the App Store now, actually direct for the Try Dry app. That's been quite successful for us over the years, and gradually we've been able to scale that. Our new 5-year strategy as an organization is to try and reach 1 million new people by 2029. So we're investing to try and, as part of reaching that aim. And then in terms of media channels, we For the PR side, this year we're really focusing on proactive media for reaching more men. We'd love to connect with more men aged 35 plus. So, for example, we decided quite strategically, with limited resources really for a campaign of this size, to focus more of the activity on media and PR for that group. So we are thinking about how we connect with different parts of the audiences in a smart way. And that changes a little bit year to year, but a lot of the work that we do is digital marketing and then the core press and media activity.
And how creative is the creative content? Is it educational, or is it something that you can have fun with, or is it too serious?
It's definitely not serious. And that's another thing that I really enjoy about working on the Dry January Challenge content. Obviously, it is a very serious subject matter for people in terms of the impact that it's having on their lives. Alcohol is having a really serious impact on people's lives. But the Dry January Challenge, the tone that we have is deliberately approachable. It is fun and humorous at times, and it is engaging. And we don't want to be kind of preaching about exactly how we want people to be drinking year round. This is about a specific moment, that reset moment in January. And so we design a campaign that is very approachable, that has that broad appeal, that hopefully really speaks to where people are at already. Our challenge is not that we need to tell people about the Dry January Challenge and what it is and describe it, because people understand the concept at this point. They really understand that this is trying to go for an alcohol-free January using the tools and support from Alcohol Change UK. Our challenge is to connect more people with those tools themselves. So that's the kind of conversion campaign that we run behind the scenes.
Yeah.
What that looks like in reality on the creative is just being really clear about the benefits. So what people might expect to feel as an end result, but the tools and techniques that we're able to offer through the Try Dry app, through motivational emails, that are going to help unlock that for people. So sleep tracking, tracking your savings, but in amongst all of that, lots of fun content, bright imagery, things to stop people in their tracks.
It's really fascinating. I mean, we're speaking in December, in the last throes of getting everything ready for you, and I really appreciate you taking time out. Must be the busiest time of the year for you guys. What are you excited about most about the 2026 campaign?
We've got a lot of exciting things planned. I'm really excited about some work that we're doing on the theme of comedy and alcohol. So we've got a piece of work that's called Funny AF. Has two different meanings that people can probably work out themselves. Alcohol free, and there's another meaning as well. But Funny AF is our work that we've got with comedians, including Tom Rosenthal, who has been on Friday Night Dinner and Plebs. He's hosting a comedy night for us in January with lots of other fantastic comedians who are in the kind of sober or drinking less space. And it's a chance for us to prove that, you really don't need alcohol to have a good time, to have fun, to enjoy that comedy experience with friends. And people can enter to win tickets to that event, which is taking place third week of January via the Try Dry app. So that's really exciting. And I think as a cultural thing, as a story that we're going to be telling in the media, it's interesting that more than half of men think they're funnier when they're drinking alcohol. But underlying all of that is some serious concerns around health. So the point is that despite that feeling of needing to have alcohol to have a good time, there's a lot of genuine concern and worry about the impact that might be having on their health. So that's interesting and new for us this year.
That idea of being funnier when I've had a drink, I think Mrs. Garner would disabuse anyone about that with me anyway. So thank you. I mean, I love this campaign because at its heart, it's really simple. And I think that's what, anybody can get their head around it really quickly. You don't need a 60-second elevator pitch to explain it, do you? But
no.
I guess people trust you as well. That must be one of the key things for you guys as well, that it's important that the messaging behind this is they can trust it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can be playful and we can be creative with the messaging around the campaign, but you're absolutely right. As an organisation, that trust, the integrity and the expertise is absolutely fundamental to what we do. So the Dry January Challenge has been through rigorous academic research and testing. As I said, 70% of people are still drinking less 6 months later when they use our tools and support, and you're twice as likely to have an alcohol-free month when you use those tools. There are numerous studies by excellent academics that can say a lot more about the impact of the Dry January Challenge. But that is something that we really take seriously, and we won't ever compromise on the evidence that goes behind it. This is designed to spark a lasting change for people. And sometimes we say that the most important day of the Dry January Challenge is actually the 1st of February. So that idea of completing the 31 days, we're also able to help gear people up through the content they're seeing through the challenge into making the decision on what the 1st of February and beyond looks like. Now, that might not necessarily be alcohol-free continually, but it might be that people have set a limit as to how much they want to drink each week, set their own goal within the app. Or it might be that they do want to extend that dry spell because they've really felt the benefit in their own lives. But the point is to have a plan going forwards. And that's the difference when we're able to offer those tools and support to as many people as possible.
Well, that's a brilliant thought to leave it with. Thanks so much, Joe. You've heard the man. Get the app, and more power to you, because if you get the app, download it and keep going on it, chances are you'll have a successful Dry January and beyond if you can. So thank you so much, Joe. And thanks for all the team there for all the hard work they put in. And let's hope it's 2026 is the best year yet. So thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to PR in the Real World. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could subscribe to the podcast and leave us a quick review. Your support really helps spread the word and reach more marketing and PR professionals just like you. And don't forget to share this podcast with your colleagues or anyone who'd benefit from the insights we share. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time for more tips, strategies and real world stories from the PR frontlines.